everyone, my name is Orlando, and today we're going to be talking about residential real estate versus commercial real estate. Before we jump into that topic, I just want to remind everyone that we're doing a $250 Amazon card giveaway. So if that's something that you're interested in, please read the rules in the description below. So let's jump right into it. So residential real estate versus commercial real estate. It is one of those questions, especially once you get into real estate, of deciding which direction that you want to go into real estate. And each of those have their pros and cons, and that's what I'm here to discuss with you today, and just so that you have a better understanding of what avenue you want to go when you're investing into real estate. So not to make this a long video and to make this type of lesson easy to digest and not get into all of the nuts and bolts of the discussion, let's just go ahead and break this down into a couple of pros and cons. So let's just start with the pros when it comes to residential real estate. Residential real estate is just cheaper all the way around. It's cheaper to get into because they're normally single family duplexes, or fourplexes, right? So it's a lot easier for individuals to get into it. There's a lot more chances to get in with low money, no money down into these properties when it comes to residential. So overall, they're just cheaper. You're looking at $1 to $2 up to $300,000 duplexes that you could get into with, minimum down payment if you do it right. If you go ahead and watch my other video where I talked about how to get into real estate, get into your first real estate property, you will understand what I'm speaking about. But, you can get in with basically little to no money down into residential properties if you do it right. And that's appealing to a lot of people to get into real estate. Most people don't have the amount of money to get into it. So the second pro of investing in residential real estate would be that the tenants seem to be a little bit more established. Tenants tend to stay longer. Tenants have better credit scores, their jobs, and they're in their careers. And we're talking about residential real estate that is single family all the way up to 4 units. And those individuals seem to not want to be in an apartment complex, and they want to be into something that gives them a little bit more privacy. And apartment buildings and units don't do that for them. So your higher career-driven, your credit-worthy individuals normally try to move, if they're going to be renters and not own their own home, they tend to move into a duplex or something, or a single family. And you really find this with seniors. If they want to move somewhere, they're not going to move somewhere where they have to climb steps or move into an apartment building. They tend to move in a duplex or a single family, something that gives them the privacy, but doesn't give them all the headaches of owning or being in an apartment. So that's number 2. Okay, number 3 would be financing. Financing on residential properties are way better than commercial property. With residential, you're probably looking at a 30-year term over a 30-year amortization. If you do it right, the interest rates are going to be, somewhere in, right now they're in a 2.75, 3% range. You're not going to get that with commercial. So financing is really a good pro when you're investing in residential real estate. So let's get into these cons when it comes to investing in residential real estate. So the cons when it comes to residential are the slow growth. So when you're investing in residential, it's not a situation where you can grow your value of your property based off of the amount of rent that you have coming in. Everything is based off of comps. So it doesn't matter how much you're charging when it comes to the amount of rent and all this other stuff. Your value is only determined by what the next house sold for across the street or a similar property down the street. So that is what you're kind of limited when it comes to residential. It doesn't matter if you put gold floors or or marble walls. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is what your neighbor's house sold for, or what someone's willing to pay for your house or a house in that area. That's all that matters. It's not based on how much you're renting the properties for and how much cash flow you have running through that property. So that is one of the cons of residential real estate. The other con of residential would be vacancies and ROI. So if you have a residential property and let's just say it's a single family, if you have a vacancy, then your ROI drops dramatically because no one's staying in it. And then obviously it gets better with the more units you have, but on residential, you only can go up to 4 units. So that means that your ROI will be affected with the increased vacancy that you have. But hopefully that will be offset with the type of tenants that you can put into your residential property. So if you put good tenants that will stay there long and you keep up your property nice, then you shouldn't really have that vacancy ROI issue. But it's still important to mention that your ROI will be affected because you're limited to the amount of units that you have if you do have a vacancy. So let's jump right into commercial. Commercial is excellent. I mean, in its own right. I mean, I love commercial. That's really where a lot of my background is in commercial. So in some instances, I'm a little biased towards commercial. But to be honest with you, I mean, I love residential too. It really has, especially when it comes to beginners, I think residential is the place to be. Commercial has a lot of nuances that not an individual who really knows real estate would be interested in, or there could be a lot of trip ups when it comes to commercial. So you just have to know exactly what you're getting into. But let's talk about the pros for commercial. So one of the pros for commercial property is that you have increased cash flow, right? So the good thing about commercial real estate that allows it to be the juggernaut that it can be, when you have cash flow coming in, and let's just say you're renting out each unit and you got a 20 unit and you're making $1,000 each. The good thing about that is if you raise up that rent, let's just say you raised it up by $100, the value of that property raises with the rent that you increase. And that does not happen in residential. So every time that I raise the rent in commercial, the value of that property goes up. So if I raise it by $10 to $100, the value of that property goes up. If I raise the rent from $1,000 to $2,000, the value of my property goes up. You do not get that with residential real estate. Residential real estate, once again, like I stated previously, it only goes up in value when next door neighbor sells the property at a higher value or the area in itself gets better. It is not determined by the amount of rent that you are charging. And that is one of the benefits of owning commercial real estate. Let's talk about the second pro when it comes to commercial real estate. It's easier to manage. And the reason why it's easier to manage is because you can scale your managing and your maintenance a lot easier over 20 units than you can, doing 2 or 1, right? And it's a lot cheaper. So let's just say I ask someone to fix 20 refrigerators. That's going to be cheaper because I'm giving them a lot of work versus if I say, hey, can you just do this one-off? So the scalability when it comes to maintenance and managing the property itself is a lot cheaper than it is, doing a one-off or a two-off with residential. So once again, the pro for commercial real estate would be that it's easier to manage and the maintenance is a lot easier. Okay, so the third pro for commercial would be tax breaks. Tax breaks when it comes to commercial real estate are enormous. If you know where all of the tax breaks are, you have a good team behind you, then I'm telling you, you can make so much money when it comes to commercial real estate. The amount of write-offs and benefits that the government gives you when you own commercial real estate is enormous. And why is that? And the reason why that is because commercial real estate, it can only be looked at as a business. This isn't something that would be looked at as a personal use or anything like that. It is 100% business. And so you get all the tax breaks as if you owned your own business, because real estate itself, even though it's an investment, is still a business. It has revenue, it has expenses, you get depreciation, all of those things you get with commercial real estate. So let's talk about the cons of commercial real estate. One of the biggest is turnover. Turnover is really big, especially we're talking about multifamily here. Multifamily, when it comes to apartment complexes, you guys have probably already, if you haven't seen it yourself, the turnover is in commercial real estate, especially when it comes to multifamily, is more than residential real estate. And the reason why that is because a lot of people use apartments as a transition. They're transitioning over into buying their own property. Maybe they're only staying in the area for a small amount of time and they're using it, like I said, just to bridge over. A lot of people will even bridge over into a more private type of living, like the seniors I was talking about earlier. Maybe they may move over into an apartment complex just until they can get into a single or a duplex where they can have a little bit more privacy. But the turnover is definitely higher in commercial than it is in residential. So let's go over to the next con, and the next con would be market research. When you are getting into a commercial property, you have to do the market research. You have to make sure that the property that you're going to own in that area can actually support all of the multifamily that's in that area. Are you going to have a struggling time renting to individuals because that area is heavily residential renting and not apartment living? The next con, the third con, is price of entry. The price of entry into commercial real estate is higher than it is in residential. It's because you're dealing with higher priced properties. And higher priced properties they're ranging between $500,000 all the way up to, you know, the millions and millions of dollars when it comes to properties. So when you have to put money down on that, you're not going to be able to get into these properties like you are in residential with little to no money down. You're going to have to come in with 20 to 30%. And if you're going to buy $1 million property, that means that you have to come up at the lowest $200,000 and at the highest $300,000. So that's what you're going to have to come up with. And if you don't have $200,000 to $300,000 to put on a property, and that doesn't include reserves that you have, then it's going to be hard for you to get into these properties where you can scale. So once again, it's one of these things to where maybe you can't get into this property now because you don't have that cash flow or that down payment money to put down. So you jump into a residential property versus a commercial. So those are the pros and cons of both residential and commercial real estate. And to summarize this, both of these have their pros and cons as we just discussed. And which one is better? Well, which one is better? There really isn't a solid answer for that. But the way that I would describe it is that residential is a lot easier to get into for the beginner level than commercial is. So I would suggest that individuals start off their investing with residential so that you kind of know exactly what it takes to deal with cash flow, management, vacancy, things of that nature. And then once you get enough money in your pocket for that down payment to jump over into the commercial realm, where it's a lot easier to make money and to scale as far as the value of the properties go. So that's my opinion on that. And if you have any guys questions or whatnot, please put it in the comment. But once again, if you found this video valuable, please hit the subscribe button, hit that like button and notification button so that when I release videos like this, you will be notified. So once again, see you until the next one. Thanks.